In this video, we are going to discuss emotional regulation. I'm going to define what we mean by emotional regulation, how distance learning may be negatively impacting your child. We will identify tools that you can use without any specialized training or books to start helping them identify and manage their emotions in a way that empowers them and allows them to engage in distance learning with age-appropriate independence. Emotional regulation is our individual ability to observe, take in, and manage our emotional response. This is impacted by age, maturity, environment, and a learned skill set. Given the multiple changes in our education system, there's a pretty good chance your child may be having a difficult time regulating their emotions. This is normal. The brain and body have learned how to adapt and interact in a traditional classroom. Distance learning requires an entirely new set of skills, which takes time to learn. The normal supports, environmental cues, and outlets are no longer available to your child that they once had in a physical classroom. This can make learning and managing their emotions difficult. The body responds to stress by activating the sympathetic nervous system. In response, the body does what it has evolved to do when a stressful situation is perceived, and that is to put all of its attention into the stressor or perceived threat. The problem with this is that it negatively impacts your child's executive functioning, limiting their focus, organizational skills, their ability to process and retain information, and managing their emotions. Until we can get this under control and back to a healthy, balanced baseline, their mind and body will not be able to receive or retain incoming information from their classroom. The emotional triggers for distance learning compared to emotional triggers at home, at school, or during a sports activity are going to look different. Your child has experience identifying and coping with their emotions in most of these situations prior to distance learning. Distance learning is a new experience. We need to provide them with new language and new tools in order to give them a roadmap to navigate this new situation. We cannot change what we do not recognize. A mind-body approach recognizes the link between our thoughts, feelings, physiological response, and behavior. So a physiological response could be something like perhaps a headache or tense shoulders or a stomach ache. And helping your child connect the two, that their thoughts, feelings, physiological response, and behavior are connected, it's going to empower them to feel like they can make changes and utilize coping skills. So in short, emotional regulation is our ability to identify, control, and respond to our internal and external environment. Emotional regulation impacts our executive functioning, and when dysregulated, a child will have less control over their ability to access and exercise their executive functioning. So how can you help? First, just like adults, kids cannot change what they do not recognize. We need to provide them with developmentally appropriate language to recognize and then express what they may be feeling. It may be helpful to provide them some language about how they may be feeling if they cannot come up with the words themselves. And we might even suggest to them what they might be experiencing in their body. But we never want to assume or tell them how they are or should be feeling. We want to ask them. Always start with validating your child. Just like adults, kids want to be heard. Avoid saying things like, "It's not a big deal," or "Stop overreacting." A simple, "I see you are upset and I'm sorry," is a great place to start. This is where a visual chart to have next to your learning space is helpful. I will include some resources in the last slide, but you can simply write out several emotions or draw images of faces. This way your child can access the list independently without you to increase their independence. Then we want to give them a list of appropriate and available tools that they can utilize on their own without your assistance. You can prompt them to use the tools on their own first, and then if not successful, they can ask for help. Something simple like a positive self-affirmation or self-talk. It's okay. I can do this. It's normal to feel this way. I just need to take a break for a minute. I'm going to be okay. Then, working into something more physical, perhaps like a slow breathing exercise, something simple like breathing in and then breathing out for 2 counts longer, a short walk if that's available and safe, maybe some stretching, drawing, or even a short meditation video on YouTube. It's important to make the options accessible and also to practice them prior to your child needing them. In other words, you don't wait until your child is in the middle of a meltdown to introduce slow breathing. So you can also make a visual list of the coping skills and have that on their learning station as well. So for example, you can even combine them. When I feel frustrated, I can use my breathing tools. If I start crying, then I can. And then if that doesn't work, I'll try, etc. Be aware that you may have to adapt and change this daily, weekly, or monthly, depending on your child, and that's okay. We've discussed identifying and validating your child's emotions, but we also need to help them identify triggers. So a trigger essentially may be something like they're not being heard, maybe the volume is not working, they might be missing their friends, perhaps they're not understanding something, it may be a difficult subject for them, the computer's freezing, any number of things. But the more that they're able to identify the triggers, the more they're going to be able to implement the coping skills. And lastly, don't forget to build on the strengths and the things they are doing well. As we've been talking about, it is normal for your child to be experiencing some distress during this time. However, we also want to be aware of any red flags. So, statements of wanting to harm themselves or others, aggressive behavior outside of an isolated incident, or their emotions not returning to a normal baseline once outside of the classroom or a triggering situation might warrant seeking help. Listed on the slide are 2 resources and 24-hour calls that you can make. Remember, you know your child, and in an emergency, always call 911. In summary, you can never validate too much. It's okay to honor the space your child is in. This is the first step in moving into a new emotional space. Create goals based on your current resources. Do not try to replicate pre-distance learning functioning. Identify and label, verbally and visually, emotions, triggers, and coping options. Practice coping skills during non-dysregulated times. Normalize and encourage the use of coping skills and outlets for all family members. Be patient with yourself and your child. You set the tone. You are enough. You are not recreating a classroom environment. You are creating a safe home for your child to access distance learning.